I don't know how many cricket fans are there in the house, but I'll try and make this story as relevant as I can to everybody sitting here. Right? The 92 World Cup was held in Australia. My story is about the Pakistan cricket team. And at that point in time, Imran Khan, cricket's great all-rounder, possibly the best captain that Pakistan has produced, was leading their team. Pakistan got off to a bad start in the World Cup. They played about 5 games and won only 1. Individuals weren't performing, the team wasn't really gelling together, and a young fast bowler named Wasim Akram was 24 years old at that time, and he was finding it extremely difficult to control his line and length, right? The 92 World Cup, for all of you who know, was the first time the white ball was introduced in cricket. Prior to that, there was the red ball. And Wasim was finding it very difficult to control that white ball, right? And so like any typical young fast bowler, he went back to his room and he said, you know what, I've got to cut down on my pace. And so he said, I'm going to run in a little bit slower, bowl a little bit slower so I can control my line and length. Gets up the next day morning. The match is Pakistan versus Australia, crucial game. Pakistan have to win this if in case they have to stay in contention for the World Cup. Wasim Akram sits down at the breakfast table. He's a bit nervous, right? He's a bit jittery because he knows he's not going to run in and bowl as fast as he wants to today. Sits down at the breakfast table. There's Ijaz Ahmed who's sitting next to him, and somebody hands Wasim Akram the newspaper, right? So Wasim Akram looks at the newspaper, and there's a headline in the newspaper, and it reads, "I do not care about no balls and wides. I just want Wasim to bowl fast. Imran Khan." Now, this took Wasim by surprise for 2 reasons. One, because this was advice that went against conventional wisdom, right? I'm willing to bet all my money, not that I have much, but I'm willing to bet all my money on the fact that if you asked any other captain in world cricket at that time what Wasim Akram should do, they would have told him to cut down on his pace. For whatever reason, Imran Khan said, forget about the no balls and wides and bowl as fast as you can. The second reason why this piece of advice was strange was because, again, for whatever reason, Imran Khan had not given Wasim Akram this piece of advice in a one-on-one conversation in the dressing room. He had decided to announce this to the global press. And he had said, I want Wasim to bowl fast. Forget about the no balls and wides. So Wasim was surprised, but when he got up from that breakfast table, he also sensed a tremendous amount of confidence seeping in. Because in effect, Imran had done 2 things. One, he had shown tremendous confidence and faith in Wasim's ability as a fast bowler. Because what he was telling Wasim Akram was this, forget about the no balls and wides, you run in and you bowl as fast as you can because that is your natural instinct and that's why you're in the team. The second thing, more importantly, what Imran Khan did with that was he gave Wasim Akram the license to fail, didn't he? Because if Wasim were to go out and bowl all of those no balls and wides that he was bowling in the first 5 games, at the end of the match, fingers would be pointed at Imran Khan, not at Wasim Akram. Right? So what happened? Wasim goes out to bowl against Australia, runs in fast, just the way that he likes to, picks up 2 wickets, bowls wonderfully well in the next match against Sri Lanka, picks up 4 wickets in the match against New Zealand, and after that, there's no stopping Wasim Akram. Pakistan are then in the finals of the World Cup. This is Pakistan versus England, 1992 World Cup. I believe it was in Melbourne. Pakistan make a modest total. They make about 249. England are on their way. They're cruising to victory. When in one of the most famous bowling changes ever, Imran Khan brings Wasim Akram back into the bowling attack, 34th over. Right? Wasim Akram comes in, removes Alan Lamb, removes Chris Lewis of consecutive deliveries, clean bowled, sheer pace. He walks away with the man of the match in the finals of the World Cup. Pakistan win that World Cup, and I dare say a lot of it had to do with that advice that Imran Khan gave Wasim Akram via the newspaper on the eve of the match against Australia. Right? I love this story. It's such a great story. But the reason I start today really with this story is because in the very recent past, I have realized that my parents have brought me up exactly the same way. And by that, I mean that whenever in life, I've had 2 options. Option A, the safer option of where I could go with conventional wisdom, but it wasn't tuned to my natural instinct. And then there was option B, which is what I really wanted to do, but it was a very risky option. one of the three family members, either my mother, my father, or my sister, it's almost like they've taken turns to do this, has always put his or her hand on my shoulder and said, you know what, forget about option A. Go with option B. Run in and bowl as fast as you can and as fast as you want, because that is what you truly want to do. And what that allowed me to do was that, at least a couple of times in life, it allowed me to take the road less traveled. And it allowed me to take the road less traveled without really worrying about the outcome. Because quite like Wasim Akram, I'd been given the license to fail. And it's a very liberating space to be in. The first time that happened was in the last semester in college, right? All of us were gearing up for our final internship, and typically, and most of you are college students, you know why your final internship is most important, because it's typically your final internship that you try and convert into your first job, right? I studied journalism in Symbiosis, by the way. It's a college not too far away from here. But by the last semester in college, I had realized that what I really wanted to do was I wanted to write about issues of rural development. It's what my final dissertation was about. And so I said, instead of doing an industry internship, why don't I, a city-bred boy, spend 40 days in a Naxalite district on the border of Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh and try and understand the complexities of the issues that I've only read about, right? So I called up home. And to put things in perspective, just in case there's a parent sitting in the audience, this is what's happening. A 21-year-old is calling home, telling his father, I actually want to go to a Naxalite district where there's no mobile network. There's a good chance you won't hear from me for 40 days, where what I really should be doing is an internship that will get me a job. And you know what he said from the other end? He said, if that is what you really want to do, do it, but do it well. And so I did. So I went to Gadchiroli. I worked with a wonderful organization called Search. They're a non-profit that's set up there. And what happened is that in the first week that I was in Gadchiroli, I spent 3 days in a village called Rajghatta, right? 3 things happened. Actually, a couple of things happened on my first day there. One, I realized how incredibly uncomfortable I was with the fact that there was no toilet in that house. And this was something I was mentally prepared for, right? Because I had signed up to go there, so I knew there was a good chance there wouldn't be a toilet. But it was amazing how incredibly uncomfortable I was nonetheless. And the fact that I was uncomfortable made me even more uncomfortable. The second thing that happened, which I was completely unprepared for, was that night before I went to sleep, 2 rats jumped in onto the windowsill, which was about 1 meter away from me. All right, successively, one after the other, just like Wasim Akram's delivery. So they jumped in one after the other, scurried across the length and the breadth of the hall, and went into the kitchen. I'm petrified of rats. If there's one that comes scurrying on stage right now, there's a good chance I'll run and you'll never see me again. But the context there was different. Because Maya Tai and Arun Bhau, the people that I was living with, had gone out of their way to make me feel comfortable. And so what I did was I took the bedsheet and I put it over my body, and I tucked it in because I was scared that at some point a rat was going to find its way beneath. But I didn't sleep because, well, they're not very quiet animals. So every time something in the kitchen would clang and then you can hear them squeak. I didn't sleep for those 3 days. I did not sleep a wink. So I walked back from there, right? I went back to the non-profit and I felt very proud of having survived. I said, good job, you've survived. And the very second after, I felt incredibly small. Because I asked myself, what are you proud of having survived? You're proud of having survived something that is everyday life for about 80% of the country. And so I walked back and I felt incredibly small. And I said, what sort of an urban bubble have I grown up in? So I went back to the non-profit, and at Search, I met a bunch of people that were working there full-time, right? They weren't interning like me. They were working there full-time. Some of them had come and they'd settled with their families there. And they'd all grown up in, by the way, Bombay, Pune, Delhi, Bangalore. It's not like Gadchiroli was their home, they'd gone to college, come back, no. And I asked a lot of them why it is that they were in Gadchiroli, and they all had one answer. At some point in their lives, they had realized that there are certain pockets of this country that need their service far, far more than certain other pockets of the country. And this was reason enough for them to pack their bags and move to Gadchiroli. So I wrapped that entire experience up. I took a bus back to Nagpur. I took a flight back to Pune. And I came back and I said, you know what? I think I've learned a little bit about courage, a little bit about sacrifice, and a little bit about empathy. And I've learned about this in a way that no curriculum or no textbook could have taught me. Right after Gadchiroli, I actually decided to teach. Right, it was just another phone call back home. I knew what my father was going to say. So I said, I don't want to do a job. I actually want to teach because I wanted to understand the grassroots realities of the country a little bit more before I started to write about it. So I taught. For 2 years, I taught in a community called Malvani, which is in the suburbs of Bombay. I worked with a non-profit called Teach for India. I'm still with them. My greatest learning in the fellowship was how incredibly unfair life is to families without means. I realized that a lot of the reason why you and I have gone to college has little to do with how much we studied in school. And we may tell ourselves that, but it has little to do with how much we studied in school. It has a lot more to do with the families that we were born in. Because in India, you still have to buy an excellent education. The reason why you and I are sitting in the auditorium and not outside on the streets begging, and there are people that are doing this as we speak, is fundamentally because we were lucky again to have been born in a family of means. And it's amazing how the system, if you're born in a family that has very little, sets you up for failure. 90% of India, by the way, doesn't finish college. So if you finish college, you're part of a very privileged 10%. But my understanding is that a part of a very privileged 10% that understands very little of the other 90%. But my talk here today is actually not about what I learned at Gadchiroli or what I learned in Malvani, right? Because I fundamentally believe that there's very little about courage, about empathy, about sacrifice, about inequity that you're going to learn by listening to somebody talk on stage. It's not how life works. In September 2002, Robert J. Thomas and Warren Bennis wrote this wonderful article for Harvard Business Review, and it's actually part of their 10 must-reads on leadership. What they say is that in the research that they had done, they found out that when they asked leaders across sectors who had been tremendously successful where they derived their leadership qualities from, all of them, every single one of them went back to an experience that was intense, often traumatizing, where in moments of adversity, they were forced to ask themselves questions. And it's from there that they derived life lessons, and from those lessons was where they derived the leadership lessons that they stand for and they stand by. My first call to action to all of you is to find these opportunities where you can learn these lessons. My title of the talk, Crucibles of Leadership, is actually borrowed from this article. The reason it's called Crucibles is because in medieval times, alchemists used crucibles, which was a vessel where they would put hot metal and they'd heat it in the hope that it would turn into gold. My first call to action is that you find yourself these crucibles of leadership. Far too often do I see youngsters look at life today as a series of comfortable events, one after the other, each one more comfortable than the previous one. But maybe that's not what life is about. Maybe life is about yanking yourself out of your comfort zone every now and then so you face your fears and you deal with the questions that you've put away for so long. It'll teach you something about the world and definitely something about yourself. My first call to action is that. My second call to action, and this is the reason why I started with the Imran Khan story, right? It comes with the understanding that I fundamentally would have not made those choices if I didn't have 3 people stand behind me and say, you know what, I have complete faith in your ability, go down option B. And so my second call to action to you is this. I think we live in a society that's very risk averse. And every time somebody decides to take a risk, we do one out of 2 things. We either make fun of him or her, or worse, we sit down with them after dinner and we break down every place in which their plan could go wrong. There's a good chance if somebody's decided to pick option B and take a riskier path, they're aware of those challenges. And maybe the last thing they need is for you to do that. And sometimes what people need is for somebody to put their arm around his or her shoulder and say, you know what? You go out and you bowl as fast as you can, and everything will be okay. That's my second call to action. That when you can be an Imran Khan to somebody else, please be. There's a good chance they'll win you the World Cup. I'll end with a quote. It's a quote that stayed with me from when I was a kid. It's from a little-known book. It's a little-known character. I'm kidding. It's by Albus Dumbledore. It's in book 2 of the Harry Potter series. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's chapter 18, page number 333. Allow me to paraphrase what he says here. He says it's our choices, far, far more than our abilities, that truly define who we are. I'll say it again. It's our choices, far, far more than our abilities, that truly define who we are. I think it's a wonderful thought to leave our children with. Maybe the next generation will grow up knowing that that is true. Well, I hope you make all the brave choices in life, and when you do, I hope you decide to run in, the wind at your back, and you decide to bowl as fast as you can, because what a wonderful sight that would be. Thank you very much.